So this is our Ask Us Anything. We're going to look at trying to do these quarterly, and the beauty of these is, typical training or advising is either, one-on-one, or it's, the typical structure that we have a, 3-to-1 ratio presentation to questions. And we definitely want to open this up more to the community members that are participating in this, to ask questions to multiple advisors. Ideally, to really save them time and get all their questions answered at once. And so we're going to start off with some quick presentations. The order go, Larry talk about financing, Keith about starting the business and strategy and Lean Canvas, Joy with HR, Tiffany with social media, David with all things with ag and starting business and the Hispanic market. And then Danny and Doug will get into more of finding financing for your business. So with that, I just want to kick it off and have Larry go. And at the very end, I might also just ask some questions to the advisors to make sure that we have a well-rounded ask us anything. So with that, let's go ahead and have Larry jump in.
All right. Jen, you're in charge here. I know my slides are there somewhere. No, that's a horrible picture. Who's that guy? So the thing that I want to talk about today, and I tend to focus a lot of what I work on is really managing your cash, because that's the most important asset you have. And in the last 6 months, it's been incredibly important to try to manage your cash. Businesses that were open, then they're closed. Then there's idle loans, there's PPP loans, and some could get them, some couldn't get them. Then some businesses are shut down again, some people are pared back, and now they're starting to come open again, and it's a mess. And so what I added this time to my slides was I developed templates for managing cash flow in the future, and then being able to compare it for what you've actually done to really kind of make proactive decisions. Because you really have cash that come from several different areas. You have them from operations where you'll generate cash. You'll have them from any personal funds you have. You get them from investors. And in the last 6 months, many people got them from loans. They got them from SBA loans. And so, it's critical to be proactive in managing your cash, because if you're not, it tends to manage you, and that's not a good thing. And you when you're out of cash, you have nowhere to go. So a cash management plan encompasses many things. It encompasses not just your operations, but encompasses, do I have good banking relationships? Did I get the SBA loans? I talked to someone this morning that hadn't got the SBA loan yet, so I went online and filled out the application form. And they'd been in business for 30 years, and they didn't know about it. And so they just filled it out. But having that, and so what you want to do is you really want to look at developing a cash management program. The SBA gave money was 8 weeks, now 24 weeks for payroll and rent and utilities. And then they gave that's forgivable if you meet all the criteria. Then they gave an idle loan for a disaster loan is for working capital. That's a 30-year term. And so that was really to keep businesses in business while they were going through this. And so managing that is really important. I've got some people that I'll check in with them periodically and their money's almost gone. I say, well, what'd you spend it on? I go, I don't know, I just need it for something, because they didn't manage it properly. I have other ones that still have the money sitting in the bank because they've used it, they've replaced it. And I said, what your goal is to try to do is to, if you can keep whatever that amount is in the bank, you use it, but you replace it and have that as your safety valve. That's what we want to do. So what I want to kind of go through is just kind of show you the mechanics. And I know, and Jen did a great job trying to attach to some spreadsheets here. So I have them, I can send them to you, it's not a problem. But these are the kinds of things that this is an actual client I have. So the big one on the right is what we'll focus on. You'll see on the left, it's actually in two parts. So I developed one that you can manage your cash, and you can manage your profitability at the same time. So this is a company over in San Jose that does staging for houses. And so she had an idle loan, had a PPP loan, and the whole. So if you really started September with about $250,000 in the bank. So what we did, I went through with her on each one of these categories based on what she's been doing to grow through her business, to look at each of these expense areas or non-expense areas, such as a loan payback or a draw is not operating expense, but it's cash coming out of the bank. And you can see that she was going to have, at the end of September, she's anticipating having $340,000 that she would have started with and have coming through. Then we looked at each one of the areas where cash would come out: bookkeeping, advertising. The auto, she put $20,000 down on a new car, and her payments are doing 2 trucks or $1,750 a month. So you can just look through these, you can kind of see where her money is going. So Jen, if you can go down to the next one at the bottom. Jennifer? Oh, there you are.
It's not sliding. Hold on.
Okay.
There you are.
Yeah. So what this will show is that she is spending $79,736. So she will end the month anticipating having $260,000, over $260,000 in the bank. So she has grown her cash by over $10,000 and operated her business. From the P&L perspective, she will have sales revenue of $90,000. Her operating expenses are going to be $62,000. She's actually going to make $27,000 this month, because not everything that came out is an operating expense. You know, the $20,000 down payment on the car is not an operating expense. So those kinds of things. So this gives her an opportunity to look at not only September, but October, November, December. Each month down there will tell her how much cash she'll have in the bank. At the end of the year, she will have $311,000 in the bank if she manages as she is projected to do. And she'll make $129,000 in 4 months. So what this allows you to do as a business, and each one of you could do it, is it allows you to look and make proactive decisions, because once you put these down, we went through a couple iterations of this. Once she put this down, we went through and adjusted some numbers. Some were too high, some were too low, some like the $20,000 down payment she hadn't counted on. And once you go through a couple iterations, you get it where it is, and then you're trying to manage to this. And her goal is to have $260,000 in the bank at the end of September. And so when businesses do this, they become very proactive in managing their cash. It allows them to look at when they can pay their debt down. It can allow them to call it a creditor and say, hey, I can only give you $1,000 in September, but in April, in October, I can give you $3,000. So you can look at this and manage it. And so this is what this is about. I have, the people that I work with, I work them to do this. I encourage them to do that. A good many of them do it. Some think, well, I can do it without it. So it's good to have something like this in order to kind of guide you along, but it's just meant solely to provide you with a template and a foundation to manage your cash. And what I found is that the people that do this get much more into their business. This is a part of the business they really haven't gotten into. And they get much more into their business. And they really start getting excited about it when they see the cash growing, because then they manage to this forecast, and all of a sudden their cash start to grow, their debt starts to go down, and they start pulling themselves out of a hole. Or they find a problem they weren't aware of, and they can figure out a solution now instead of when it happens in 3 months. So this is really around what I wanted to just talk about today. Was I really encourage you to have this type of a template. I'm happy to work with you on it. We can send it to you. I think Brandon has them. And this gives you, it gives you a snapshot of your full of next 4 months. So then the next slide down we have, I think, Jen, if you have that one that has the actual. So this is one that I developed that will show you what you project and what you're actually spending. And on one side that you're looking right now is the cash flow, and the other side is the P&L. So just as we did on the 12 months for September, you saw what all your money was coming out, how much money you were projected to make a profit. And then as each week I have people, they get their QuickBooks and they just write in, either go through the categories, look online and say, well, how much have I spent on accounting and bookkeeping in the first week, the first 2 weeks, first 3 weeks? And you can see things start coming up. Like if I forecasted to spend $850 on bookkeeping, the second week I've already spent $2,000, what happened? Where did I miss it? So instead of waiting till the end to find out, you find out now. And so these are just a couple of tools that allow you to manage your cash, look at what you're spending versus what you projected, and make adjustments so that you don't have money sliding through your fingers. That's it. Thanks, Jen.
Larry, just one quick question before we move on. I mean, that was incredible information, a lot there. You make it seem so easy.
Well, you put it in a calculator yourself, so it's all.
And so in your experience, like, what would you say like, is the largest obstacles of people, you know, or business owners, why they decide not to know their numbers, not to actually do these exercises, and how do you help them get over that?
Fear of the answer. They're afraid what they're going to find. Number one. Number two, they may not understand it. So sometimes if they don't understand it, it's best just to go the other way. So as a lot of us teach, I know, I think Keith does the same thing as this, but we try to teach them what to do instead of just showing them what to do. And if you teach them to do it, then they'll start doing it. And I've had the people that learn it really get into it. But I would say it's a great question, Ben. I'd say the fear of what they're going to find out, number one, kind of the ostrich theory. If I don't look at it, it's not there, and not understanding it. And I found that people are afraid of numbers. They're afraid of what they're going to tell them. But you have to know it. You have to know the answers before you can come up with a solution. And many people are just kind of go along, and they'll keep throwing money at it, keep investing money, they're borrowing money, keep throwing it in there so that things get paid, but their debt keeps going up. And you haven't figured out a plan to kind of get out of it through your operations, or a solid management plan of borrowing money, but then also planning to pay it back, right? Because borrowing money is one thing, but as I say, what's the only thing a bank wants? They want their money back and a little extra for interest. That's it. They're just renters of money. So, but those would be the two reasons that I found that people are reluctant to do it. They don't understand it, or they're afraid of what they're going to find out.
Awesome. Hey, thank you very much. All right. Well, we're moving on to Keith Haltway here. That's going to lead us into strategy and some tactics and tools that you can use in order just to take those next steps with understanding your business model better.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And kind of picking up where Larry left off, I mean, when people are afraid of looking at their numbers, and I run into that all the time with my clients, they're also really reluctant to do any kind of business planning because their idea of a business plan is 30 or 40 pages long. They don't see the value in it. And quite frankly, they don't know how to write one. What I try and do is teach my clients how to use two basic tools for business planning that are single sheet tools. And one's called the Lean Planning Canvas, and the other's called the One-Page Business Plan. And they work for both types of situations that people are in these days, either starting new businesses, which I know the news is filled with businesses closing, but quite frankly, startups are really starting to pick up again because people realize they're going to have to do that, similar to what happened in 2008. Or people are taking a look at their existing business and say, I need a different way to make money. I need to pivot the focus of the business. Both of these tools work for both of these situations, which is really, really important. But there's some key similarities between the two, either pivoting or starting something new. And that is vetting the idea. And it gets down to three items. And one is desirable. In other words, will people buy it? 42% of all businesses fail because people create a product or service nobody wants to buy. And that's a verified statistic. So 42% simply because people got hung up with the idea but didn't think about the market. The second, is it viable? In other words, can you make money doing it? If you're not making money doing your project, you've got a nice hobby, but you're not going to be sustainable for very long. And third, is it feasible? Are you the right person to pull it off? Do you have the skill sets to be able to do it? Do you have the necessary resources to be able to make it happen? So no matter whether you're pivoting an idea or you're starting a new business, these are the three filters that we go through. The next filter that I go through with people is something called a SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses can be the business's strengths and weaknesses, or the people who's running its strengths and weaknesses. Most of the clients I'm working with, especially with startups, say, you know, I'm great at my skill set, but I don't know how to do accounting. So that would be a weakness, which is easily overcome by hiring a bookkeeper, which is what I always recommend anyway. The opportunities and threats are external. You know, opportunities can be things you can't control in the overall economy. If you were in the building trades or in real estate in the early 2000s, you know, it was a great opportunity for you. The market was hot until it wasn't, which you couldn't control either. When all the banks imploded in 2008, a lot of those folks didn't do so well. Contractors, there were something like 8,000 licensed contractors in the county of Santa Cruz in the early 2000s. And by 2011, there were 2,000 left. So it really took its toll on the trades. Again, the threats are important to understand. We're living through one right now. There were a lot of leases that talked about, the impacts of fire and earthquakes and those kinds of things on your lease, whether or not, you're going to be able to stay in the building, those kinds of things. But nobody anticipated pandemics, which is now being written into a lot of leases. If there's a mandated government shutdown, you still have to pay the rent no matter what. So those strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats are kind of the second filter that we take a look at when we're looking at a business idea, either for a new business or a pivot. The screen in front of you is something called a lean planning canvas. And this is my first step with almost every client that I work with, whether they come to me with a written business plan or not, because this really outlines and makes it really clear all the key components of a business, okay? This is what's also called a business model generator. In other words, can this business make money? And if you take a look at this was originally written by a guy named Alex Osterwalder, and it was developed specifically for businesses that were already in business or just starting off, but not really focused in on complete startups. And in 2011, a book was written called The Lean Startup, and from that, a change was made in this planning canvas by a guy named Ash Mayora, and he developed the Lean Planning Canvas, which has been endorsed by a variety of folks, and is taught in most of the major business schools. And if you take a look at this, there are the two building blocks for this entire canvas are the bottom right-hand corner where it says early adopters. In other words, who are those folks who are waiting for your product or service to come to market? And then the top left-hand corner is the problem or pain in the market, or as I like to call it, the opportunity. In other words, what are the problem you're trying to solve? Those two have to connect. You have to be solved. The problem has to be worth solving. And a lot of times when I talked about that 42%, the problem definitely wasn't worth solving. So those are the two that are key in developing the rest of the canvas. Next in line is the unique value proposition, which sets you apart. And the unique value proposition is not the easiest part of this whole canvas to get together. It usually takes some time, but it's absolutely critical. When you have your unique value proposition really dialed in, it goes on your homepage for your website, and it actually helps you keep the visitors to your website for more than 5 seconds. In other words, does it speak the language of your potential customer? Is it solving the problems that they're trying to solve? Is your product or service solving those problems? There's a great example that Ash Mayora uses, saying when you're developing your unique value proposition, if you have a company that generates templates for resumes, most people would think, well, the unique value proposition is you're going to get a great resume out of the deal. When in actuality, you're going to be able to attain your dream job, and that would be your unique value proposition, attaining your dream job. So when you're putting this together, it's meant to be done in 15 or 20 minutes. It's supposed to be done quickly. Usually takes 2 or 3 versions of it before you get it dialed in. And also my recommendation is, because it takes a couple of iterations, to date each one so you can keep track of your thought process. So the Lean Planning Canvas is a great tool. It is up on our website at santacruzsbdc.org. If you go to resources and planning templates, it exists there along with a tutorial and a video to help you fill it out. And it's kind of the basic building blocks for most businesses and most of the thought processes I go through with people. The next thing that I use is something called the one-page business plan. And this was developed by a guy named Jim Horan, who unfortunately passed away about a year ago. A great guy. I got to know him. I was trained through the one-page business planning company on their methodology. It was pretty rigorous training, but Jim was always ready to answer questions, even after I was certified. He was a CFO for a lot of Fortune 50 companies, chief financial officer. And he got really tired of seeing annual plans that each division would put together that didn't tell him anything. So he really streamlined the planning process, and it fits on a single sheet of paper. As the planning canvas is pretty broad and general in a lot of ways, the one-page business plan is very detailed. It usually takes me 3 or 4 sessions with a client to get through it. But going back to what Larry talked about is teaching our clients how to use the tools. My initial result I'm looking for with a client is to be able to get them the business plan that they're going to need to drive the business. The second most important thing to me is I'm teaching them how to plan their business, which I think is absolutely vital. Most people go through their entire business life without a business plan. And it breaks it down into 5 steps. A vision, which is a 3-year vision. A mission statement, which is your promise. In a lot of ways, it's your unique value proposition. You have 8 or 9 yearly objectives, and that's a calendar year, that have a metric involved in it and a date. The strategies support each objective. There's not an objective that you will write that will not have a strategy to support it. And it'll have 3 parts to that strategy so that you can make sure that you're going to be able to achieve that objective. They do not have dates. So in other words, if you have a social media strategy, you're not going to dump it at the end of the year. You're going to keep it going. So they can go through the years with you. And last but not least are the action plans, which actually breaks the strategies down into action steps. In other words, it's going to be a task and a date. The quote that's used in the beginning of this book is something that I think is really important. It was developed by a guy named I.M. Pei, who is a world famous architect who passed away at 102 about a year or so. And he said, first you must make the complex simple, then you must make it work. And I think that's a great quote and a great thought to be able to carry forth as you're doing your planning process. Demystify the process. Again, the days of the 30 and 40 page business plans are kind of gone. Most of the business plans that I write that are narrative in nature are used to get loans from banks. And most lenders don't want to see anything more than 8 or 10 pages, to be honest with you. And quite frankly, they're going to read the executive summary, which is usually a page and a half, and they'll make a decision based on that as to whether or not they're going to move forward with it. And I want to finish off by simply saying, keep this in mind as we're moving, we've got 1 month left in this quarter. We've got the holiday season coming up, and then we've got 2021 coming up. So my question to everybody in the audience is, how prepared are you for the upcoming holiday season and 2021? Thank you.
Well, Keith, okay, a lot of information there, and I'm sure a lot of questions. And since I'll just take my privilege and ask you one real quick. You mentioned in the beginning, really like knowing yourself and the skill set you bring. I'm just curious, what kind of gut check do you provide people in a way just for them to understand what skill that they bring to the table, or maybe help them understand what skill they bring to their business? Are there a certain process that you just work with the entrepreneur to understand what exact value proposition they bring themselves to the business?
Well, I think when it comes to the skills, that's pretty easy. My first session with clients is really, without being glib about it, is tell me a story. Why are you doing this? What skills have you had? What experience have you had around this? There's a lot of questioning that goes on in the first session or two, so I can get a good sense of who they are and what they're doing. Try and build a lot of trust with clients so that I can be, very honest with them about the chances of succeeding. Somebody once asked me whether or not I would tell somebody if it was a good idea if I didn't think it was, and I said, absolutely not. It's my job to make sure that I'm giving those folks the best take, but I'm also not going to jump ahead and offer suggestions and information if I don't think it's going to work.
Keith,
yeah, go ahead, Larry.
when you work with clients and you develop this at the front end and business changes over a month, 2 months, 3 months, do you review it with them periodically to kind of see if they need to make any adjustments?
Yeah, what I tell people is, you know, the beauty of that one-page plan is that if something's not working, you can pull it and it doesn't compromise the plan. You know, you know, what we're looking for, what we're doing is trying to look into the future. And, you know, you're not always accurate with that. So you know, you build a plan so that something, you know, you call it severability or whatever you want to call it. That's what it's called in a lease. If something's not working, we're going to move it. We're going to pull it out of there and do something else. We're going to track it. You know, most of my clients are long-term, I have long-term relationships with. So I tell people I'd like to help them get their business going. That's one step. The real trick is keeping and staying in business. And that's key. And so, yeah, I work with people all the time on a very long-term basis. And then I give them to you.
Yeah, thank you.
That answer your question, Brandon?
Yeah, it did. Thank you so much. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's you know, typically sometimes assumed or overlooked, and sometimes could take a deeper look at how we approach our business as ourselves, and how that needs to potentially evolve with, you know, new business models. So I think that's, you know, obviously very important to have that mirror that you provide to the business owner, and how, again, they are looked at as a value add to their business. It's not just the model, it's also that entrepreneur that's a part of that model.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I think, just to end up, you know, I think one of the things that every one of the SBDC advisors has with their clients is that really high level of trust. You know, we work hard to develop that level of trust so that they believe us, you know, and I think that's really key.
Awesome. Okay. Well, next we have Joy, our HR advisor. We're so thankful to have Joy. We, you know, we typically have, you know, a very strong finance strategy team, and then we all just kind of go to Joy for everything HR that continues to just evolve, you know, almost like a 24-hour newsreel, it seems like, with HR policies coming through. We very, very much appreciate Joy and the work she does, the connections she has, the advocacy she provides to the clients. So thank you very much, Joy, and let's get it started. You're muted.
There I go. Thanks so much for the compliment. Yeah, it's been a really difficult time to keep up with what's going on with not only the COVID stuff, but unemployment stuff, but just all of the changes in the business world from a legal standpoint. So I couldn't start this without having you go look at my next slide, because this is HR's theme song forever, but oh my gosh, it's so much more important now. So next slide, Jen. Yeah, obviously document, document, document. And getting ready for this, I didn't realize that I would have two laws that were signed just this recently that would lead to my primary topic that I wanted to cover with you. The governor passed, and excuse me as I'm reading them because they are hot off the press. One law expands his governor's decree that covered workers' compensation for companies, and now it doesn't expire until January of 2013. So for everybody in the healthcare and the responders, it doesn't end ever. So that makes more sense, but it makes people with COVID eligible for workers' compensation benefits immediately. The law took effect the minute he signed it, which is somewhat unusual. And all workers if they're in the same location, if there's four or more incidences of COVID in a workplace, it's considered an outbreak. And if they're all in the same location. So the law assumes that they got it at work, and it will be up to our wonderful small businesses clients to prove that they didn't get it at work or their workers' comp firms. So it's a little disconcerting from a cost standpoint. I think, Larry, in your cash flow thing, you need to jump that workers' comp rate up probably fairly dramatically. The second part of the law that the second law that he actually, that was Senate Bill 1159, by the way, if anybody wants to get a little bit more in depth as to what that covers. The other one that he signed was AB 685, and it makes it mandatory that an employer notify everybody that's been exposed within 1 day of finding out, or they will be subject to fines. So it's documentation, and what I'm hearing from so many of my clients is that they don't have a COVID protocol plan in place. So when that first incidence of COVID hits their workplace, they don't know how to do it, who to report to, how to write a letter to the employees. So I've been looking for 2 days now, and I have such sympathy for our small business clients because there's a ton of information out there, but it's not really concise. It's not step 1, step 2, step 3. It's in a world that most of us have never walked in before, so we don't understand the brief descriptions of it. I did find fun in one place. It's the County Health Officer of Sonoma County, of all places. And they have an actual, in their appendix, they have an actual social distancing protocol and COVID-19 site-specific protection plan. And it gives you almost, if you take each of those categories and you answer it specifically for your company, you almost have that 1, 2, 3 steps that I've been looking for. So I've been playing with that to try to see it, because now as we are faced with the governor's executive order not going away on workers' comp, that's going to be one of the most saving aspects of what you've got is if you have a protocol plan, you've upgraded your illness and injury prevention plans, which is the IIPP, to dictate what you will do under a pandemic, an emergency situation. That's going to be one of the biggest defenses your attorneys are going to be able to use, that you've made a plan, you've communicated it, trained your employees on it, and that you have followed it and implemented it and changed it as it needs to be changed. And as you know, every day it's almost a new thing. Brandon was hinting at all the updates I try to keep the advisors aware of. Some days I am almost embarrassed because it's 2 or 3 a day, but things are happening very, very rapidly in our legislature, and it's just, I can't say strongly enough, document what you're doing, get a plan together. If we can help you with that, it is definitely not in my past experience, but I'm getting there, like I did with EDD. And speaking of EDD, I think you've all seen on the news that EDD has shut down taking any new applications for the next 2 weeks while they get their system corrected and do a little bit more of the fraud investigations. So it's supposed to not hurt or affect anybody who's already drawing unemployment, but it's going to be even more difficult, if not impossible, to get through to anybody in EDD for the next couple of weeks. So if you're having trouble, let us know. If we can find a way to help you, we will, but it's not going to do much good for the next couple of weeks. The other thing is with the return to work thing, we have to be sure that we are communicating to our employees what's going on. If we don't keep them up to date, then they don't understand some of our actions and some of our reactions to things. It's not some things that are in our control, like not having a protocol plan. So I think be sure and keep that going. The other thing that documentation and communications affects is poor performance. Just because you've returned people to work and just because your business is still going doesn't mean you aren't going to have the same problems you've always had with performance. And documentation is going to be critical so that it can't be used as a wrongful termination in the middle of all this other things that we're looking at. So please get into that habit. Like Larry's saying, you don't like numbers, you don't like to document either. I clearly get that, but it's not a choice, and it's definitely not a choice now with this COVID. If you take temperatures at the door, you're not supposed to let other people see the temperatures because that's medically sensitive material. It can't go in their personnel files, so you have to have a box that's going to be COVID related, period, and document. So I can't stress those enough. So what else? Thanks to Jen for rescuing me with slides. What do you have on the next one? Okay. The other things that I'm finding with that we're into a new world of is this working from home. If you've never done that before, I'm sorry, but this is another plan you're supposed to have, because a lot of the work from home, you have to be careful that you're paying for all hours worked. You have to be careful for people who are classified as exempt, that the work they are now doing from home is not eligible for that exempt classification anymore. And to document your reason for changing them to an hourly payroll. Expenses, you have to reimburse them sometimes for things as unexpected as the use of their internet if they're relying on that to do their work. So there's just so many things that are new to us, and in the middle of that, gosh, you're watching your cash flow and you're building a business plan and knowing where you're going, and I'm telling you to communicate, document. So totally understand, believe me, I can speak for, I guess I can speak for the rest of them. We're almost all as frustrated as you are with all of the things we're being hit with. I've been in HR more years than I will be willing to tell you, but I have a difficult time keeping up. So if I didn't have some of my sources to keep up with it, I wouldn't know what is coming up. And with these two new laws, I can't give you a whole lot of details, but I can find them for you. Anything else?
Awesome, Joy. Well, I think again, you make calmer oceans of uncertainty out there, you know, and help entrepreneurs again, you know, deal with the difficulties of that HR provides that they can't get away from, and they really need to address. My quick question to you is, when someone is looking to start a business, what would be, from your perspective, you know, the first things that they should do HR wise?
Well, I think it's, and I so appreciate Keith and Larry because they're wonderful at doing this referral. I think it's important that they understand early in the process, not the total aspect, but what's expected of them when they become an employer. Because all of a sudden they're being successful because they wrote a great business plan and they're washing their cash flow, but all of a sudden they're getting ready to hire and they've already hired somebody and now they want to know what they have to do. So I think it's got to be part of their thought process early on, that when they get ready to do that, hire an employee, become an employer, there are some steps they have to walk through And if they plan those ahead as part of their planning process, I think they're not as frustrated when they get to the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. So our next advisor is actually, I think, our newest one to the team. And we're super thrilled to have Tiffany. We've been extremely pleased by the trainings that she's provided. And I know that you guys on this this call will also be very, very thrilled to receive her wisdom in social media. So Tiffany, go ahead and get us started.
Thanks, Brandon, and it's really good to see everyone here, and what great information so far. All of you guys, very impressive. I actually, Keith, everything that you said in your presentation today, I'm gonna piggyback off of a little bit, because what I want to focus today on is actually more of a strategic side of social media marketing. And I think we all know with COVID-19, there's been an increase in screen time. In fact, I was just updating my PowerPoint slides last night for my e-commerce webinar that I'm going to be hosting later this week. And I was looking at the latest reports from Hootsuite, which is a social media management program that's been around since kind of the beginning of social media. And they had a really great report. I think it was like 186 pages. And I went through every single slide and wanted to take a look at how COVID has shifted digital behavior. And what was interesting is this is a quarterly report, so keep that in mind. But in this quarterly report, what was interesting is that even as things started to open up, this is obviously on a global scale, we were still seeing increased screen time. And so 70% of internet users over the age of 16 are still using more screen time on their mobile phones, 47% on their laptops, 33% on their PC or desktop computers. And within those statistics, what I thought was interesting was that even with everything going on, and especially you see, a little more of a volatile social environment right now with the election year, which is completely normal. But even with everything going on this year, the latest report said that 43% of internet users are spending a lot longer of a time on social media. And it averaged out to be about 2 hours more per day across the age groups. And so we as business owners have to make sure that obviously we're discoverable online, but before just jumping on every single platform and signing up for every program, we really need to be strategic about how we spend our time and energy. So what I wanted to talk about today is how to set goals, how to identify your target market, and those two things come back to that original business plan that you put together with that initial advisor that you have. It's extremely important to make sure that you have that written down. It's going to help you in making sure that you're using the right platforms online. So I want to start with goal setting, and I want to talk about what's called a SMART goal. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So the first question that I ask my clients is, what do you want to get out of social media? I have a social media management company, and so I've got clients that range from nonprofits, where their primary goal is to raise money for their nonprofit, to government agencies that want to improve community relations and keep the community educated on the projects that they're doing that affect their community members. I've got e-commerce clients that obviously want to increase their sales. So get specific, make those goals measurable, make sure that they're achievable in the circumstances that we have today and relevant to the economy that we are in right now, and make sure that you've got a timeline for these goals. And again, that should really be incorporated into your business plan. It should line up with everything that you put together in your business plan. And then obviously the next step would be making sure that we know who our ideal client or customer is. And going back to what Keith said, what is the pain point of your ideal client or customer, and how do you solve that pain for them? What is your place? So when it comes to a target market, I usually ask my clients, hey guys, let's sit down and write this out. And I would say about 90% of my clients don't know how to accurately identify a target market. Some of the factors that I want you guys to think about would be age, gender, geographic location, interests. You know, when we get into building these advanced marketing personas, you know, I'm targeting women in their 30s who like to practice yoga, shop at Whole Foods. They wear Lululemon. They're college, you know, graduates with, you know, that are typically married with young children. So we get really detailed in these marketing personas, and I want you guys to really dig deep into what that ideal customer or client looks like, and make sure that you're also evaluating the current customer base of your competition to make sure that you're, you know, identifying any commonalities that you're missing that your target market has achieved with their target market. And once you have that target market figured out, really the next step is to make sure that you're focusing on the correct platforms. And so there are certain businesses, you know, I'll work with that think that Facebook and Instagram is for everyone, and that's not the case. It's really not. Each platform has its own behavior and its own demographic that utilizes it. And so we want to be mindful of that. And so I want to go through a couple of ways that you can have an online presence. The first of which is, of course, a website. So make sure that you've got a website. 99% of businesses should have a Google My Business account. This is a free way to get your business listing discoverable on both Google Search and Google Maps. So very, very important. Again, free tool. You've got analytics. You can post updates with that social component to it, list your business information, upload pictures to showcase your business and your products. There's a lot that you can do with it, and that's a free tool. So make sure that you've got your Google My Business listed if that's relevant to your business. Another would be reputation management sites. And of course, all of these are going to be different, and depending on the industry that you're in, you may need, you know, one or more. But you've got Yelp, you've got TripAdvisor, Angie's List for home improvement type companies or home oriented. And so make sure again that if there's a chance that you're going to be searched on that reputation management site, that you have created and claimed your profile for your business. And then let's go into social media. This is my bread and butter. And so there are so many platforms out there to pick from right now. You've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, we have YouTube. There's TikTok, which has exploded since COVID-19. There's Twitter, there's Snapchat, there's LinkedIn. Oh my gosh, what do we use? There's so many, even beyond that. You know, a lot of people consider even Reddit a social media platform. And so what we want to take a look at is, again, looking back at that target market, which platforms do they utilize? Where do they hang out online? That's where we need to be. And so a couple of points on what you should be posting during these times. A lot of these platforms have really adjusted and proven to be, you know, resources for small businesses during COVID-19. And for example, Facebook, they have a COVID-19 resource center specifically designated towards COVID-19. And it gives you the ability to actually share a COVID-19 update on behalf of your business. And that is labeled as you are sharing a COVID-19 update on behalf of your business, where you can share with people how you're adjusting the hours, you know, your operating policies, and health and safety and sanitation and all of that. So keep people up to date, because it's very hard to keep on top of what's going on. And within that, how all of our favorite businesses are adjusting. So use these tools when possible. Google My Business, Yelp, they all have COVID-related features as well, where you can update whether you offer online services, whether you're offering curbside, takeout or delivery, and how you're really adjusting your business model to fit your customer or client's needs during these times. These resources, again, these are all free. And so make sure that, again, when you're hanging out online on behalf of your business, you're being seen and you're utilizing those platforms that your target market is utilizing, and that you're using some of these brand new tools that are at our hands to keep our customers and clients educated and up to date on what's going on. The other thing, and this is really just generally speaking, the other thing would be just making sure that you're human. I think more now than ever, we have all realized we're all just human beings, and that's the one thing that we all have in common. And we need to incorporate that into our social media. Especially those younger generations right now want to know that there's a face behind the screen. So do not be afraid to tell your story. That kind of comes down to that value proposition that Keith was talking about. Tell your story, your background, and be real and authentic, because that makes you more relatable. And at the end of the day, people are going to want to buy from brands and businesses that they can relate to. And the last piece of advice is that all these platforms are changing on a daily. In fact, I just logged into my Facebook Pages Manager yesterday, my app on my phone, after hearing that they were launching this new Facebook Business Suite. And the entire interface has changed. The colors are different, the navigation is different. They're integrating Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger a lot better than they used to. And we're seeing that with the introduction of the Facebook Stars program, the Facebook paid online events, the Instagram stickers that help you drive traffic to, ordering food and getting people to purchase gift cards. All of these different features are evolving on a daily. And most of these features are really aimed at helping small businesses navigate and grow during these times. So, keep an eye on what's going on. I was looking at some statistics last night on how, basically e-commerce is being affected and people's purchasing behaviors. And across the board, with the exception of the 60 plus demographic, that would be the only exception. On average, 50% of people are saying that they're more likely to shop online and actually make purchases. So if there's a way that you can bring your business online with the new features of, the Facebook and Instagram shops and everything else that's going on, make sure that you're learning those features or signing up, with the SBDC and learning from an experienced consultant. So a lot going on right now with social media, a lot's changing, and it's on a daily basis. But, really when it comes down to it, we really need to be strategic. In addition to adapting to some of these new features that are being offered to us. Brandon,
Awesome.
do you have any questions?
Tiffany, I have just a real quick question. Social media seems to be something that seems overwhelming, that you just have to continuously stay on top of and can kind of take over your life. Is there a way that you structure or discipline your engagement with it, or encourage your clients to do so in a way that they don't have to always just be on their phones or on their computer 24/7, but just like make blocks of time or something like that?
Yeah, actually, a couple different things. I always encourage my clients to sign up for the newsletters, LinkedIn, Facebook, it would be Facebook Corporate, Google. All of those have email newsletters that keep you up to date on the new features. So I always tell my clients, first of all, just sign up for those because then you're getting that knowledge firsthand instead of logging into one of the platforms and saying, uh-oh, I don't know what this means or how to utilize it. So And, you know, I really try and keep my clients up to date. I do what's called a Tip Tuesday on my social media platforms to help educate people and help them stay current on, you know, some of the new features. But those email newsletters, great way to keep up to date on everything that's, you know, been changing. And the fact that it's constantly evolving, I think that's what I love about it the most. It's a challenge. But for all of us on a day-to-day basis, it does become overwhelming. So the second thing that I always tell my clients to do is batch out your content, even if it's just a week at a time. Sit down and strategize that week. And, you know, what I do when I put together social media strategies with my clients is come up with kind of a calendar of, you know, this day of the week is going to be this type of strategic post. This day of the week is going to be this type of strategic post, and then this day of the week is going to be this type of strategic post, and mixing up the type of content and the purpose of the content, and then helping teach my clients, you know, helping them learn how to use those publishing tools. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they all have, not all of them, but the majority of them have free publishing tools where if you just sit down and plan out a week at a time and create your content, and get it scheduled, that's one less thing that you have to worry about other than just monitoring and responding to comments and messages. So that automation really helps with time management.
Great. Thank you so much again, Tiffany. Our next advisor is going to be David. And David is one of our bilingual advisors, and we're extremely fortunate to have him on our team. He brings a wealth of experience as well as just a compassionate heart and understanding of the community that's based mainly in ag. David, go ahead and get us started.
Thanks a lot, Brendan. Really appreciate it. So a lot has already been said around the type of work I do. I really appreciated what Larry, Keith, Joy, and Tiffany have shared. A lot of that information is what's being shared with most of my clients. As Brandon has shared, I work primarily with farmers who produce fruits and vegetables and meat production. In the work that I do, I take a three-pronged approach to supporting our farmers. It's access to market, access to capital. Within capital, there's land involved. You can't farm unless you have land, although now we have other forms of farming, like urban farming, rooftop farming, vertical farming, indoor farming. There's quite a assortment of ways to produce food nowadays. But those are and the third one is business and financial management are the approaches. And so, I mean, most of the time, or the approach that I take with the clients that I support, are asking them around production. It's really important for farmers to understand and to have a production plan laid out for a year. Farming is a highly perishable business. You produce tomatoes, you produce cucumbers, zucchinis, cauliflower. I mean, if you don't have a market for it, it's going to go to waste. And so our farmers really have to plan. And farmers start with a production plan. And this can really apply to really any business. But for the line of work that I focus on, it's really important for farmers or producers of really any food or perishable product that they have a plan laid out. First, I always recommend a year. There are some farmers who do have a hard time with that. So depending on the crops and the products, it's at least 3 months, a quarter to 6 months, but preferably a year. It helps to lay out just like how cash flow is going to work. Because as Larry mentioned, cash flow is super, super important. I liken cash to oxygen for humans. Yeah, if you don't have cash, then you stop breathing as a business. So super important to have it. And so in the line of work that I function, it's really important to understand what you're producing, what your costs to produce are. It's super important for a farmer to know how much it's going to cost you to produce a box of lettuce, for example. Because if the market will not cover your costs, then you have to start asking yourself, at what point do I just let this crop go. It's also really important to ask yourself, do I have a market? Do I have a market for this crop that I'm going to plant today? And it's really important to start thinking about that before you plant that seed or that transplant. Because by the time you have that crop ready for harvest, it's already done. And so it's really important to understand your production cost. It's really important to understand who your market is and that you have multiple options for market outlets. It's also really important to understand what the price of your crops and your commodities are. Within this line of work, there are lots of resources as there are for any other type of business. USDA, which is the Department of Agriculture for this country, has just a plethora and a huge amount of resources for businesses out there. And so it's super important to understand that there's the NRCS, which is the Natural Resource Conservation Service. There's rural development. There's a farm service agency for money, access to capital. And there's also a risk management agency that all fall under the USDA. And the USDA puts a lot of money out there. With this whole COVID situation, it's been an interesting situation for our farmers. As most of you know, restaurants have closed, hotels shut down for quite a bit of time. And if those were the only outlets for the farmers, then their business completely collapsed overnight. And so farmers, just like any other business, had to pivot and pivot quickly. And so lots of farmers markets, lots of direct to consumers using lots of online platforms to sell produce directly to consumers. What we've seen through this whole COVID pandemic is a lot of community coming together to support these smaller farmers, organic farmers, primarily organic farmers, but really all farmers in general. Because like I said, this is a highly perishable business. And so you have to have a market for these products when they're ready to be harvested. I think it's worth mentioning that there was, in addition to your EIDL, your PPP, that almost all my clients applied for, that qualified, because there are farmers and business owners, for that matter, in general, whose immigration status is unstable. There are resources that are not traditionally thought of. And so it's really important to be connected to the community that you're in, nonprofit organizations in the community who have access to these other resources. And so it's super important to just understand who is in your community as a business owner, not just banks, but other nonprofits who are in the community, like the SBDC, as a resource to help you move forward. There is one grant right now that I will just share with the participants and the consultants that are on this call. It's the CFAP, which is basically the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. So there's a second round of funding that the USDA just approved for farmers and farm businesses, whether you're a rancher, meat producer, or a fruit and vegetable producer, that is now available for farmers who have been impacted by the virus. Lots of farmers have been impacted, whether it's been because farm workers have been sick and they can't make it, or because they have children at home who are sick, or because they're doing distance learning. Lots of farm workers have had to stay home. At least one of the two parents have had to stay home to care for the family. And so that has impacted the farmer's ability to harvest or produce the crops that were put in play. And so those are all reasons that would make you eligible for this CFAP grant that's currently available. I think it's worth just sharing really quick that the fires also impacted the farmers in the region as well with the ashes. If you were a berry producer, a lot of your crop went to waste. And so again, there are resources out there through the USDA that are available to support farmers who have been impacted either by the fires and or by coronavirus as well. And I'm going to stop there and see if, Brandon, you have any questions for me at this moment?
Yeah, one quick question, then we're opening it up to everyone on this call. You mentioned a real like hard but important truth, and that's if you find out your costs outweigh the revenue that you're going to bring in, that you need to make a decision. And I'm curious at that point, you know, what does that conversation look like? Are you talking about, you know, potentially pivoting to a different type of product? Or are you talking about a different type of process, or the way that they handle their people? I mean, what does that process, what does that whole conversation look like? I mean, it just seems like a very difficult but necessary one to have.
Yeah, no, thank you, Brandon. That's a really good question. And so you start off by asking yourself, can you sell this product, right? And you have, it's a process. And I think it was Keith who mentioned that in this line of work, there's a lot of relationship building. And so for farmers, you have to make sure you have a strong relationship with farmers, especially when you're asking a farmer to consider plowing one of their crops. That's going to cost them more to continue working it than to just cut their losses. And so there's a trust factor there, Brandon, that needs to exist before you start addressing that conversation. Every farmer loves their crops, believes that their crop is worth everything in the moon, and it's not always true. There is a market for every crop, and for as much as farmers want to believe that they should be paid for all their work, and I think that it makes a lot of sense because they put a lot of sweat and money into producing a crop. There are times when they're better off just cutting their losses, right, and planting another crop, right? Because in farming, it's not only cost, but it's also timing. And when you have a finite number of acres or a set of land that you can work, your goal is to try to, one, care for the land, but try to optimize your land space available. With the farmers that I work with, they're primarily smaller to medium-sized farmers, so they don't have a lot of land available. And so land is really important. So when a crop isn't making sense, it's better to disc it and then start a new crop. And so you bring up, in addition to saying, okay, cut your losses, you also have to show the other side, the upside, right, of planting a new crop and the potential of that new crop as a way to balance that setback.
Awesome. Thank you, David, for that. I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn in ag and apply it to other types of businesses. And so, again, thrilled to have you on the team and your wisdom in that market. There is a question in the chat, and I would just remind those on the call to put it there, and then I can also look to unmute people if they do have have a question they want to verbalize. But the question Bill has to Tiffany is, for a business that sells a technical product and service to other businesses, is social media a viable marketing sales tool? And how would you implement a social media strategy to other businesses?
That's a great question. So I'm assuming, and I'm hoping I can get some feedback. As you're saying a technical product, I'm assuming, is this like an online course? Is it, if you wouldn't mind kind of responding in the chat. But yes, no matter what, yes, social media would be a great channel. This strategy is going to depend on the structure of how you're selling that product, whether you've got an e-commerce site that you're selling through, such as like a Kajabi, such as a Podia. There are a ton of different ways that you can actually sell online services such as these, and integrate them into an e-commerce type of website. And depending on the way that website is set up, with the new Facebook Shops section, you can actually sell those as products on Facebook and Instagram. The other question would be also, who are you selling to? LinkedIn might actually be a good option for you, depending on whether it's a B2B model or B2C model. But I see both an organic and paid strategy on some of these social media platforms extremely beneficial, just depending on the type of product you're selling and who you're selling to and the platforms that they're using. In fact, I'm running an ad campaign for someone who is selling an online course. It's a $5,000 product, and I'll be running a funnel process for him through Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So.
Keith, if you're looking to expand your business, do you need a business plan then, or just to start your business?
Oh, you need a business plan to expand your business as well. Expansion can be god-awful expensive. I've lived that experience with my business. And unless you plan carefully for that, you can get into a lot of trouble and jeopardize your core business. So yeah, it's absolutely vital that you plan for any type of expansion. And that's financial planning, marketing, operations. Your operations costs can go through the roof if you don't manage that carefully. I'm assuming Larry's tool would be really helpful in this as well, to be able to look ahead, at least using some assumptions and make sure it cash flows out. But yeah, you make and lose money in operations, and when you grow your business, growth is expensive. So yeah, you need a plan for it.
And really, the things I do, Brandon, too, are I've seen, as the kids mentioned earlier, we work in tandem with a lot of people. So when he gets something new, he'll hand them off to me to go to the next area. And majority of the time, he'll have forecasting in there already. So it's already done. I review it with him and kind of split it up. So what I do is really a part of what a business plan has that Keith would do. Yeah, so that's just.
Great. This question's for everyone. How much of the strategy, HR, finance should you be sharing with your employees, or is this conversation you just keep within the owners?
Well, for me, I think from the financial part of it, that's a real tricky one, because it's many times, people never feel they're being paid enough or whatever, and they see numbers and they think they should have more. So from a financial part of it, I think that you probably need to keep that to yourself, that proprietary information, with the executives that run the company. Public companies can have it. This isn't a public company, probably, that you're working in. So there was a time that this is when I was in business school, they were talking about having a transparent financial statement so everybody saw it, and it was a disaster. Because when everybody saw it, someone would see, why am I not making more? They're making money. It must be going to the executives. They didn't understand that they have to take the money and they're paying down loans, or they're paying for expansion. They think the executives are taking all the money. So probably something like this in a close held company, it's probably best for the financials to be, kept to yourself.
Well, and a large part of that financial is the compensation thing. And just like everything we've been talking about this afternoon is that preparation ahead of time. Because if you know ahead of time that you are paying a competitive salary, or it's the salary you can afford, whichever it is, then you are ready to answer those questions when they come up with something specific, rather than it be a general broadcast. So a large piece of what Larry's talking about is that compensation side. And for example, EDD has a survey called the OES survey that you can look up what the market rate is for a lot of your positions. So you should be doing that anyway to pay an equitable wage for what you're asking for.
Brandon, I think you can share, having done this, you can share your vision and your mission with your employees. I think it keeps them motivated. I think in a lot of ways, if people see that this company is growing in a very structured way, in a very careful way, that it's going to add to retention. And for a lot of companies, yeah, compensation is really important, but are people going to enjoy their work? And I think when they feel like they're part of something that's growing, I think that can be a real attractive component to your business and help with retention. But sharing that mission is also really important too, and unique value proposition, because it gives people that perspective on where they're working and how they're working there.
Ben, I kind of piggyback on what Keith has said too. I've had people, and I've seen this in business, I've said, why don't you post your mission statement so your employees can see it, your customers can see it when they come in and they know what you're about. And those who've done it, they've gotten great feedback on it. So what Keith said is exactly right.
Better yet, get them informed and helping you develop it.
Yeah, that can be a little dangerous.
You know, 2020 has been a very difficult year. What advice would you have for, especially as we go into the holidays, for just business owners to, you know, prepare for that time of ideally making certain sales happen, or also just to, you know, I guess, stay cautiously optimistic about 2021 that's just around the corner? What advice would you have overall just to help business owners just stay in the right frame of mind?
Who is that directed to?
That's to anyone.
Okay.
Well, I have a plan, because the last 2 months of the year are generally when people make up a lot of their year in terms of revenue and profitability. And we have no idea what it's going to be like. And so I think you have to be very cautious. I have besides the cash flow that I've done, I also have a thing called Open to Buy that helps people buy inventory based on their sales and turns and things like that. And this is where you can really get in trouble. If you purchase like last year and it doesn't happen, you're in trouble. And so you really need to plan. You need to look from a financial perspective, and you need to make sure that you maybe be a little conservative. I've told people that going forward in the next couple of months, I'd rather see you miss some sales than I'd see you have too much inventory, you know, an extra $50,000. I'd rather see you miss $5,000 in sales because you didn't have the inventory, rather than be overburdened and now you got people calling you and you try to borrow money and you can't get it. And so I think the planning process, that's why I'm trying to be so diligent with people I'm working with, is get through this COVID thing we're talking about. But when you get into even during good times, I haven't planned for this, particularly during the bad times. I think planning the financial, the cash flow, and making sure if they're a product-based company, they have their Open to Buy, you know, tied together to their cash flow, so they know exactly where it's coming in and what they can expect, and they have a contingency plan so that if something doesn't happen or it's not going well. I think we saw many years ago, department stores had sales during Christmas because they were just because the Christmas sales were not strong. So they said, let's get rid of it now. They didn't wait till December 26th. They started selling the 10th and 12th and 15th to get it out of the store. So you need to really be proactive in that, and the whole planning is part of the financial planning.
Yeah, I'll support that, because during the 2008 recession, one of the key elements for people that had inventory was really tight inventory controls, and that proved to be the saving grace for a lot of companies. There are a lot of articles written about it in a lot of newspapers and magazines about how inventory control is going to be key through a recession, and the uncertainty that we're looking at right now certainly fits that bill.
And just from a marketing perspective too, once you do have you know, a strategy as far as inventory goes, if you are a product-based company, just adapting to some of the new features that some of these social media platforms do have, and knowing that in-person sales may not be strong as they were in previous years. So how can you take that business and start selling online? And again, some of these tools like Facebook and Instagram shops are free. So, you know, what are the ways that you can monetize utilizing social media and some of the free tools that they have to offer?
Great. Well, let's I think that's a great note to end on. Again, thank you so much for our team of advisors for taking time out of their busy days, being here. To everyone that's on the call and that will watch this, know that the SBDC provides free advisory services. It sounds too good to be true, but this center's been doing it for over 35 years in Santa Cruz County. And you're meeting many of the advisors on the call today, as well as others. And so we would encourage you to go to our website, santacruzsbdc.org, to learn more information, to sign up for an appointment. Again, thank you, Joy, Keith, Larry, David, Tiffany, for your participation today. I am honestly always in awe of your wisdom and knowledge in what you do and the heart that you have for the small business community. So thank you everyone for being here today.